Well, I'm really excited to be here tonight. I enjoyed, working with you guys, and I have been involved in the program here for almost 15 years. So I've been active with the UW Entrepreneurship Program, and it's a great program. And what you heard from Connie is a very exciting competition. So for those of you who want to go do it, just give it a try. It's definitely worth your time, your effort, and everything you put into it. So it's a lot of fun. So tonight, you're going to get a kind of a preview of what you need to put in your presentation. And so those of you who are really fast on your feet can take some of this and incorporate it into your presentation, because I guess I get to do a little judging along with your esteemed professor here. And so we're going to have a lot of fun with that. What I want to do tonight is really give you a better idea of what do we look for in investor presentations. So what is it that's like really critical when you guys are presenting, and what are the things that we as an investor are going to listen to? Now, how many of you in the audience here are entrepreneurs, like have a company or started a company? That's great. How many of you want to start a company? Okay. Now, this is a big class, but one of the things I wouldn't mind doing if we have the time is if I could just go around really quickly and have you guys say what your name is, and if you're working someplace, but also what team are you on that's presenting tonight. So, it was really great. You took the first seat down here, right in the front. So I'm going to call on you first. Oh, I'm not going to call on you. Well, you have to identify yourself, though, because, if we have any press in here, I can watch what I say. Go ahead.
I'm Mr. Karthik. I'm a part of Sixth Man and Mr. Global Grains. I just incorporated my company yesterday, so I'm basically the US company.
This company or another company?
Yeah, I actually incorporated Mr. Global Grains.
Awesome, that's really good. Is that your first company out of the class?
Yep.
It might be, yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool.
My name is Anish. I'm also part of the Sixth Man team that's always here.
Yeah.
By day, I work on machine learning at Microsoft.
Oh, great. Good.
I'm Itai. I'm part of the Sixth Man. I work for Microsoft in Mac Phase.
Is this like a Microsoft row here?
That's the two of us.
Okay. And which plan are you working on?
At Microsoft, I work at the Macintosh Business
Yeah.
Unit.
Okay, great. And which are you on the same team?
Yeah, Sixth Man.
Okay, super.
Sixth Man team. My name is Udit, and I work for a startup.
Okay, good.
In case you're wondering about Sixth Man, it's a basketball reference.
It's a basketball. What was it? Basketball.
Basketball reference.
Reference. Okay, cool.
My name's Nate Wolsey. I work as a GIS analyst that works for Telecommunication Systems Inc. Downtown, and I'm on Accelerando.
Okay, super. And what does Excel Roundup do? This is your chance.
It's a music app.
Okay.
It's a music follow along app. Helps you practice and get better playing it.
Okay, good. You're up.
I'm Brody, and I'm my own team. I'm working on dance.
Okay, super.
I'm Mike Lyons, and I'm on the Accelerando team, and I'm a web developer.
Okay.
I'm Mark Beachman. I'm on the Accelerando team, and I'm a software engineer at Microsoft.
Okay.
I'm Ryan Olsen. I'm a software engineer for Fibers Technology. I'm on the Accelerando team.
Good.
Hi, I'm Siege Getzinger. I'm on the Lazy Trip team, and I'm a software engineer for the University of Washington Medical Center IoT.
Hi, my name is Rahul. I work as a program manager in Microsoft, and I'm on the Lazy Trip team.
Okay.
My name is Lucia. I'm also on the Lazy Trip team. I'm a fourth year MBA student here.
Good. We'll go up to the top.
I'm David. I'm also an operator.
Yeah, right. You met earlier.
My name is Doug. I currently work as a software engineer at an e-book distribution company called Smashwords, and I'm on the Bailey Robotics team.
Okay, that sounds interesting.
I'm Tyson Trotman. By day, I guess I'm a manager at Amazon, and by night, I'm part of the Bays Robotics.
I'm Paul Payne, Bays Robotics team. I work at the Nordstrom Innovation Lab.
What is the Nordstrom Innovation Lab? Is that at Nordstrom?
It's like a startup that works inside
Wow.
Nordstrom.
I didn't know that.
Tim Cook. I work for Boeing, and I'm on Bays Robotics.
Okay.
I'm Josh Lawrence. I'm also an engineering manager at Amazon, and I'm also on the Bays Robotics team.
IT Danish. I'm program manager at Microsoft. I'm on Bays Robotics.
You have a big team over there.
6.
Yeah, that's great.
I'm Brett Bennett. I'm a flight controls engineer at Boeing, and I'm on the Lazy Trip team.
Okay.
I'm Margot Bautista. I'm not a part of this class. I'm hoping to be one day.
Okay, good.
My name is Galen Erickson, and I'm working on Spackle, which is a shared housing app.
And is that the senior angle or no?
The what?
That's not the senior angle that Connie was talking about.
Well, so it may
It
be
could have a
applicable to that.
senior.
Yeah, I think it actually could. And by day, I work for a startup called Positive Performance.
Okay.
I'm Alan.
I know. You guys, my interlopers over there. Hi.
For not part of the class.
Okay.
I'm Brett Blue. I'm not part of the class.
Guest myself, my name is Connor.
Okay.
My
Is this
name
the guest row?
I'm Yengo. I'm a UFAO chief.
My name is Lauren Long. I'm a second year full-time MD student. I'm part of the Lazy Trip team, and currently I'm a fellow at Center for Commercialization of Future.
Oh, good. Okay. Are you in the class?
No, I'm Eric.
Okay. We got a lot of people on here.
I'm Maru. I'm on this faculty, and I'm the second year MSRE student.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Tony Kwong. I'm on the U.S. Meds Online team, and by day I'm a professor of clinical oncology, and by night, third-year law student.
Hi, my name is Sarv Sinha. I'm also on the US Meds online team. I have a company in lab software. I'm also a management and strategy consultant.
Hi, I'm Vinita Sharma, and I'm in US Meds Online. I'm a full-time computer science graduate student at UMass.
I'm Nakib. I'm part of the US Meds Online, and I'm program manager at Bing Local Search, and I'm also part of this.
Hi, I'm Faisal Nasser. I'm part of the US Meds Online, and I'm currently an engineering manager in Microsoft at Center.
Hi, I'm Harshita Amit. I'm part of the Spartan team. By day, I'm a software engineer at Microsoft in the SQL Server group.
Hi, I'm Paul Marshall. I'm part of the Spackle team, and I'm a temporarily unemployed software engineer.
Entrepreneur to me. And how about you guys down in front?
My name's Hook, and I'm not.
Okay.
I'm Aaron, and I'm also not part of the
Okay. All right. That's good. Well, that was good. It was helpful for me because I wanted to kind of get a feel for like who you guys are, what you're doing. Are you also auditing back there?
I'm part of the TV team.
Okay, good. So what I wanted to do tonight is really give you a feel for what we look for in plans. So a lot of people ask, what do venture capitalists do in a typical day? And we kind of put it into three concepts. One is called finding, meaning we look for opportunities. We talk to investment opportunity. We talk to entrepreneurs, and we're looking for great ideas. The second we really call funding, which is really around how do we get this company funded, and what are the elements that you're going to typically put into a financing. So that's part of where we spend our time. But the bulk of our time is spent on what we call feeding. So when we invest in a company, we'll take typically about a 20% ownership stake. And then with that ownership stake, we're going to take a board seat. And we're typically going to work on these companies. Largely around the strategy of the company, the management team, how's this company going to grow, how do we accelerate it? So that's kind of where we put a lot of our effort in. So just with that perspective, when we look at companies, we're obviously looking for companies that have a big return potential. Now, all of you who are doing companies here tonight or doing an idea don't have to have that. I mean, the point of entrepreneurship is it could be small, it could be big, it could be medium-sized, and there's people doing nail salons as one idea of entrepreneurship, restaurants is another, and Google and Facebook is another. And all of those things can be entrepreneurial. And so when we talk about what do we look for in these presentations, what I want you to take away from this is what's really critical to thinking about a business. So that's kind of what I want to spend time on. And as we go through this, please feel free to interrupt. If you have any questions, put your hand up. I'll pause a couple times if we need to. But I want to make sure this is interactive. So hopefully you guys will ask questions and challenge. If you say, hey, this is a bad idea, or I don't understand why that's an idea, come and ask me about it. Make that comment. So let's get started and talk a little bit about what is the essence of a good presentation, which you're all going to be doing one here later tonight. And I would say it gets down to a very simple couple of concepts. So we'll get into some more detail around some of the substance you need, but really the concepts are really around, the first point is, when you're doing a presentation, be excited, show something that really is going to have an impact, and show people the enthusiasm you have for what you're doing. So when you're in this business plan competition, which I've judged now for a number of years, why do people come out of this winning? It's because they're excited about what they're doing. You heard that from Connie, but they really have a passion about what they want to do and the impact that they're going to have on that idea and on that market that they're going into. So that's important, that it's compelling visual. I don't know if you've been looking at PowerPoints over the years, but what you see now with PowerPoints is there's fewer and fewer words on PowerPoints and more graphics. And we're getting entrepreneurs coming in that basically have PowerPoints with like 2 bullets, per slide, with all kinds of cute little pictures and everything. And the concepts that they're getting across is what's really important. So the other thing we look for, and this is really important, is what I would call D squared. So it really gets down to how do you differentiate what you're doing? Why is it unique? Why is it going to have an impact? And the second is really, can it be disruptive? So what's the concept of disruptive? Anybody want to give a try at that? Yeah.
Basically, you're putting other businesses out of business.
That's certainly one.
Like a calculator put the slide rule out of business.
Yeah, exactly. Or Lotus put, paper out of business, basically.
So basically creating unrealized demand which was already there but wasn't matched before.
Yeah, that's certainly our element. The way we think about it is in two vectors. One is really around, you could have a disruptive technology or a disruptive idea, and that's one concept. Or the other concept is really a disruptive business model. So if you are doing something very differently than it was being done before, so take the travel business. How many of you used to use travel agents? Probably not that many. But remember, you used to call a travel agent up and you'd be on the phone and you'd book the travel. Well, what happened here was obviously there was a disruption that was enabled by technology and online travel. But secondly, it actually changed the entire business model for the travel industry. It changed how they did commissions, it changed how they booked fares. All of those things made a big difference. So that was a disruptive business model in a sense as well. So those are things to keep in mind. So when you're presenting, think about how you could frame that. That's what's really important. The other is you have to tailor it to the investor. So every investor is different. So an angel investor will invest very differently than a venture investor will invest. And a corporate investor will invest in another way. They're looking for a strategic reason to invest. So you have to also think about your audience. Now tonight, this is probably less relevant to what you're doing. But if you go to the business plan competition, you have to think about who are you actually going to try to get money from. Do you want a company that's going to be VC fundable, or a company that's going to be funded by angels or friends and family? So think about that a little bit. And the last point is you really want to show how do you get to money. So how does this idea, particularly if it's a for-profit idea, how does this idea make money? And you have to be really clear about that. That's probably one of the most important things that's critical. Now, obviously, how many of you have nonprofit ideas? Does anybody have a nonprofit idea? Because I know some classes you've got sustainability. It sounds like everybody's trying to go for something that's profitable. So think about that. That's really important. Now let's take a second on this. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this part because this is really around how do you frame the kind of money that you want to raise. And it really has to do with thinking about how are you going to spend that money, what's it going to be spent on, and what time frame will it be spent in. Most times when you go out to raise money, you're typically going to go raise money for a 12 to 18, 24-month period. Now ideally, maybe you get the company profitable on that money, but most people are going to have to do multiple rounds of investment. And so when you think about how to frame the money that you're going to raise, this is what you want to do and what structure are you going to use. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because we think it's kind of less relevant to this class. Any questions on any of this stuff so far? In terms of how you think about it? So now we talk about your presentation, and what do we look at in the presentation? And I think somebody mentioned, I forget who I was talking to, that said, do you have 8 principles or something that you're using in your presentation? 7 pillars, I think that's what you said, the 7 pillars. So I kind of have 6, but you could have 7. And the ones that I look at are really around 2 concepts. We're going to spend a little bit of time on this, which is why do you invest? But then the six things that we think about is, and I don't know how this matches your 7 pillars. I don't know if this maps to that. The product, the market, the business strategy, how do you go to market, how do you sell, the management team, and then also what's the business opportunity, including the financial projections. And I think you're not doing financial projections from what you said here. But the other thing that's really important, particularly if you're going to have a company that is going to, at some point, make your investors money, is how do you exit that company? So, like, what are the opportunities for you to get an exit? Yeah, question.
It's probably a question you've gotten many times before, but I mean, about the financial projections, you know it's wrong.
Yeah.
So basically, what do you look for in that kind of question? Do you look for, I mean, do you want the entrepreneur to be honest, or how much percentage of dishonesty are you expecting?
Yeah. Well, there's always a lot of optimism. So there's like this function in Excel, and you basically, it's called the due northeast function. So it just basically plots here, revenue line that way. What we're looking for, though, we're looking for your assumptions. So what are the assumptions underneath that? Because the numbers are always going to be wrong. So whatever we see will never match up to what reality is. Maybe mostly it's lower than what the entrepreneur shows. But we're really looking for what are the key assumptions that you have underneath that. Does that help a little bit?
Sure. Can you give me an example of, you mean, for example, the market size? Is that what you're talking about, or you're talking about costs?
Well, in a business projection, what we're looking for is what do you think the size of that market is? How are you going to penetrate it? And then what's the business model? So, am I going to charge? Let's say a software company. Am I going to charge a license fee? Am I going to do it on an annualized basis? Am I going to do it on a monthly basis? Is it a SaaS model? What's the model behind it? And then, how do you scale your people? So that's the other thing. Is why do you have to hire people? When are you going to hire them? And for what reason? Any other questions on that? Yeah.
I'm a little surprised to see exit opportunities.
Yeah.
It seems like that might give the impression that
you want to get out quick.
Exactly. So why is that important to you?
Why is it important to me or the entrepreneur?
Well, I guess I know why it's important to the VC because you want to make money, right? Why is it important to you to see that?
To see it, because what we want to do is we want you to think through who your partners are going to be. So if you're doing a business, the way businesses really accelerate is the idea of how do you leverage partnerships. And so many of your partners are going to be your exit opportunity. And so I think it shows, a knowledge of the overall market to say, here, I sit in this market, and I've got these people that can compete with me or partner with me. But also, it actually shows that you could get leverage in your business. So that's another point. Yeah?
Question on the previous slide on valuation of the company.
Yeah. I kind of just skipped over that.
Yeah, I was just curious. Is there any rule of thumb on valuation?
Yeah.
Like what percentage does?
Yeah. So if you're going to take venture money, typically a venture investor is going to want to take 20% of the company at one venture firm at an early stage. So you have to be prepared to give up, if you want to have 2 investors, anywhere between 20 to 35% of the company if you're taking venture money. Now, if it's angel money, you may only give up 5, 3, 4% of the company.
But does it matter like how you value the company? Is it going to be a $5 million, $10 million company?
So to that question, a lot of early stage companies, if you are just starting, the valuation is going to be probably the $1 million to $3 million range, depending on kind of how much substance you have. If you've got a product developed or something, it's going to be on the higher end, maybe 3 to 5. But normally at that first round, you're going to be somewhere between 2 and 5 million as your valuation when you start off with. Yeah.
What is the typical discount that VCs apply to whatever you are valuing the company?
It's always high. Normally, we really kind of look at the market reference. Come on in, grab a chair or stand up, whichever. We kind of look at the market reference. So we'll say for your type of company, let's say it's a robotics company, we'll look at kind of what are the valuations in that space for that size, that type of a company, and we use that as our measurement. The other thing that's really important now is we want to get that ownership percentage. For a VC, we're typically looking to get 5 to 10 times our money, depending on the stage of the company. So if you value your company at $100 million, it's going to have a $1 billion market exit. So that's not a very attractive valuation. So does that help? Yeah.
So how much weightage do you give to the ideas which are targeted toward international countries or special cultures?
How much credit do we give for things? Yeah. I think it's really critical to think global and to think about that early in. But you usually want to get established in a particular market, particular geography. But everybody now, obviously with the way the internet is so widespread, needs to think about their business in a global way. And we see entrepreneurs who are, like we have a company in Portland that is doing really well. It's called Acton Software. The entrepreneur had 2 successful companies in Silicon Valley, moved to Portland because he wanted to have development talent that was affordable. He didn't want to go to Silicon Valley where it's like, 30 or 40% more to have a developer. But he then also had an Indian development team. He has a California sales office because he's using what methodology he learned in his previous company. And so this company is very well distributed. It's got people in different places. So that's important. Any other last questions while we're on that?
Quick question.
Yeah.
I was wondering if you can validate this. I read the book Venture Deals by Brad Feld, and it goes through all these points.
Yeah.
How accurate are the assessments or wisdom that the corporation imparts?
In terms of how to think about
valuation.
Oh, I haven't read his book. I know Brad, but I assume it's probably on track. I don't know specifically. What you'll find is that typically most venture capitalists are going to look at these factors. How does this match to your 7 pillars? Is that similar? Or? Yeah. So that's good stuff.
One more quick question.
Yeah.
When you say management team, what are you looking for about the team? I know it's great to have someone who's exited 3 companies in that space, but at that point, the VCs are pitching you rather than the other way around.
Right. Yeah.
So what are you looking for on the management team?
What I'm looking for primarily is and we just backed a 20-year-old entrepreneur, and he's grown his company from $2 million to $4 million to $8 million in 3 years, right? And he's in the cloud hosting space. So what do we look at in him? I look for somebody who has a good business head, has a lot of passion about the customer. That's really important, and talks about customers. We've talked to all kinds of entrepreneurs, and I've had meetings where the entrepreneur comes in and they're just totally focused on making money, and then you ask them, well, how do you make money? Well, they don't really talk about customers. They talk about, oh, I got this great technology. It's going to be wonderful. Everybody's going to buy it. And so I look for somebody who has a good idea of how technology intersects with customers. So that's important. Does that help?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to move this along because I know you guys have these presentations. And so why do why invest? When we think about a market opportunity. These are a bunch of bullets, and we'll get into these in the next couple slides, so I'm not going to go through it. The key thing is it's a big market opportunity. For VCs, there's 2 points that are really important. And there's a huge debate in the VC community about which one you rate higher. One is a big market opportunity. So some VCs say, if I have a great market and a mediocre team, I can make a lot of money. And there's other VCs, the majority of whom, say if I have a great team and they have a generally decent market opportunity, they'll out-execute anybody else. So the 2 critical things that we look for in a venture backable opportunity is this combination of market and management. Any questions on those concepts? Because those are important, at least for VCs. So let's go into a couple of these in a little more depth. And I don't know how much in your 7, what were they, principles or pillars? Do you go into some of this in those?
Those are his.
Product, target market, how you will reach them. Yeah, so I mean, a lot of overlap. A lot, business model.
So I'm going to give you a little bit of perspective of kind of the nuances in here, and hopefully that'll help you a little bit. First, it's really critical that this product is differentiated. So why is it different? So here's an example of a company that's kind of interesting here in Seattle. So these guys came out of the business plan competition called, anybody know the company Joey Broth? You know what they do? So she's come up with a great idea, which is a bra that you can basically put, your iPad, not your iPad. you can put your iPhone in. Yeah, if you put your iPad in, maybe that would be different. But it's like, well, so why is this differentiated? I mean, why couldn't somebody else do this? Right. Well, the thing that's kind of interesting is they've applied for a patent on it. They actually have had prototypes they've shown are working. And now their big challenge is how do they keep that differentiation going? And that's kind of one of the big challenges that company's going to have is, what's to prevent Victoria's Secret or whoever else from, basically doing the same thing. So they're going to have to actually sort of take a first mover advantage. Now that's a very different company than one we backed in Austin that's doing holographic 3D images that give you full parallax view with the light shined on it. Now that is differentiated. Now the question is how fast does that market develop? But that's a highly differentiated idea with 52 patents behind it. And so that is clearly differentiated. And the question that you go to, which we'll get into next, is how big is that market? And how do you get to that market? But that's really important. And if you're looking at a product that has a consumer element to it, you always want to look for something that can create a brand. So the opportunity to create a brand. So like this Joey Bra idea, how do they create a unique brand? How did Howard Schultz take coffee, and create Starbucks as a unique brand? I mean, that's the kind of thinking you have to sort of think through, particularly if it's a consumer-oriented product. And it could be a small company. It could be France Chocolates. I mean, how many of you know France Chocolates? Hopefully a few people. Or Seattle Chocolates or whatever. They're creating a brand in a very commoditized market. So that idea of can we create a brand and how can we create a brand is like really an important element. And as you guys are doing your plans today, some are going to be more amenable to a brand. I'm not sure if a particular robot that might be amenable to a brand. But a lot of B2B opportunities are not quite as heavily emphasized on that as maybe a B2C, business to consumer opportunity. And so those are important elements of the product, but fundamentally for us, when we're looking at technology products, we need to have really unique IP sitting underneath it. And ideally, patents applied for, patents could be pending. So we did a company here that's doing an offering called Deal Board. And so if you want to go on your, I don't know if that's mine or something. If you want to go on the Apple Store, you can go download it. Now, what do? They actually allow you to go flip brands, and it creates a preference. So it creates a personalization application that actually then allows you then to target that user more and more every time they interact with them. So they have a whole bunch of patents around this IP. Very unique application of personalization technology. So hopefully you kind of get the drift here of what we look for in product. Any questions about product at all? Before we go on? Yeah.
How important is it? We got actually different answers about this. How important is it for VC to see that the company has patents? I
think the important thing, what kind of answers did you get?
Well, we got both, yes and no.
Yes and no, yeah. My view is I think you have to be able to show that it could be patented. Because by the time you get it patented, you may have to, the company may be out of business, because it takes a while to get a patent. But, I think what you want to do is look for the opportunity to be patented. So this company I was just talking about has applied for patents, and they think they have free air. So when we invested in them, we did an evaluation of whether we agreed that they had free air. We don't know they're going to get a patent, but we knew that they had some free air to navigate. So we have one company that was really interesting. I invested in before Voyager. It's called Primus. These guys did customer service applications. They actually developed it through artificial intelligence. And they had probably a 3-year lead in the market because of their technology. But then they squandered the lead, and they actually were successful. They went public eventually. But they actually squandered the lead because they made a bad management hire. And it was in the sales area. And when they made that bad sales hire, that essentially put the company back probably a year and a half. And it was great they had a 3-year lead on technology because that still gave them a lot of room for success. So that IP thing is important in a technology company. Probably less important in a consumer brand where, maybe the brand is more important. So let's go on to the market. And this is what VCs always talk about. I don't know if you got a couple opinions on markets already. Have you had any opinions on markets or how people think about it?
God creates markets, we just participate in them.
Yeah, and we like really, really big markets. So, and VCs always say, we look for a market that has $1 billion, dollar market potential. The reality is that we also look for great vertical markets. So if you have a very unique market that has a big enough niche, that's also a really good idea. So it's either a large or an untapped vertical are the two concepts that we look at. And also the other element is high growth potential. So a lot of these markets are very early. I mean, how could you imagine what Facebook's market was going to be when Facebook started? You could probably look at, printed media. Well, at least when I went to college, we had a book called The Pig Book. And when you came into college, you got this book and had everybody's picture and where they were from and everything. And that was a concept that Facebook used to put it online, essentially. But how could you say what's the size of that market? So many times you have to sort of imagine what the market's going to be as a VC, and hopefully agree with the entrepreneur. And also look for intersection of large trends. So this little graphic kind of shows where Skype sat, which was the intersection of online video, rich interaction, rich content, and obviously an enabled network. And so a lot of times if you have market dependencies, that can be a big issue. So when you're presenting and talking about your plan, think about what the market dependencies are to actually making that work. Any questions on market? That sounds good. The next one is business strategy. This is really around what's your go-to-market. How are you going to sell your product? How are you going to get it into distribution? And how is that going to work? And this is the area that a lot of business plans fail because people don't think through well enough, how this go-to-market strategy is going to work. So this is an important thing to think through. And also, are you going to sell direct? Are you going to sell through a channel? And how does that work? So that's an important element in the market stuff. Any questions on business strategy at all? Go-to-market. The next one is the team, and what do you think we look for? We talked a little bit about that. But if you were a VC, what would you look for in a team? Just to, anybody answer that?
Someone who's done it before.
Yeah, that's helpful.
Someone who knows the market?
Yeah, I think that's a good one too.
Curiosity.
Yeah.
Complementary to each other.
Yeah, that's really important.
In one of our other classes we were doing called angel investing, we talk about basically affordable losses. So the affordable loss that an entrepreneur has, like how much has he put in?
Oh, okay,
like
interesting.
What's the chance that he
can
will quit?
sustain it or
Sustain it.
I was having a meeting with an entrepreneur today who's been working this company for like 10 years, and you could just kind of tell, he was getting a little tired because it's a tough job being an entrepreneur. And it's a lonely job being an entrepreneur because you don't oftentimes have people to talk to other than your peers. So that's an important element, where are they in that cycle? I think those were all good things. The key thing we look for is this passion element. And the other thing that I used to coach management teams before they were raising capital, before we started Voyager. And one of the other things I look for is the team all saying the same thing. And this is important if you guys go into the business plan competition. Because your students are busy, you're not necessarily always talking at the same level. The people that are on those judging panels and we as investors are looking for is there consistency in the team around what they're doing. And so I remember talking to a company once and I asked the VP of marketing a question, same question. I asked the VP of sales the same question and the CEO question. CEO jumped in, the one guy started to answer it, the CEO jumped in, ran over their answers, and then the VP of marketing had a completely different answer. And you could just are these guys together or what's happening? So that's really an important thing. And if you do go onto the business plan competition, spend some time rehearsing together, because that's really important to show that kind of fact that the team is all, saying the same thing. Are you guys all saying the same thing? You've got the story down. And whoever said prior track record read the slide, so that's also important. But if you have a prior track record, that will help. But there's been a number of entrepreneurs who had no prior track record that have been, insanely successful. And you can start with Zuckerberg and run down the list, Gates, and so forth. So, what did those guys have? Well, they had a really good idea, and they had a way to bring a team together around that idea. Yeah.
If you founded a company and failed, is that still worth mentioning?
Yeah, I think that's actually good because, a lot of them are going to fail. And I think if you can say, hey, I failed, but here's what I've learned, that's also quite helpful. And so I think it's what we're looking for is the learners. We're looking for, okay, you failed, but, what happened? How did you learn anything new? Can you do it better as a result? Did somebody else have a question?
I was about to ask the same thing.
Okay, good. Anything else on team? Okay. Business model, I'm not going to spend a huge amount of time on this because you guys are not necessarily dealing with this in this plan. But this is really important, and you asked there were a couple of good questions over here about, what do we look for? We're looking for assumptions. So we're looking that there's been some logic put into this plan. And so if somebody says, I'm going to sell, so I looked at a company here in town back quite a while ago. They had this really cool product. It was essentially goggles that you would wear, and it would give you, essentially a 3D image, of what you were looking at. And so it was really kind of a cool idea, but they wanted to sell it as a consumer product for like $500, $600, per headset, And that didn't make any sense because in those days the computers were selling for like $1,000, and you couldn't sell a consumer device for that price point. So we talked about what should you do, and we said, well, we should take this to a B2B market, and maybe take it to the medical market, or someplace where they actually had an application and people would pay a lot of money for it. They didn't do that. They decided to take it to the consumer market and talk about their business plan projections. They went from like 10 million to 30 million to 500 million in the third year. And it just wasn't even credible. How many companies have ever gone at that rate of inflection? Like no one. And so their business plan just fell down for two reasons. One is the assumptions they had underneath this product and how it was going to get sold didn't really stick together. And the second is the rate of acceleration didn't make any sense in terms of how they were showing. So to your point, I think somebody said, yeah, the numbers are wrong, but sometimes they're like so wrong that they're just not even believable. So you want to be believable. That's the key thing. Any questions on business model? Makes sense. So in conclusion, what do you want to show as you go through this? So we're going to give you guys a chance now to show all this stuff. So passion's really important. The other thing that's amazing is you have to make the ask. So I've had entrepreneurs who come in and make a presentation, and they don't actually finish the presentation. They don't actually say, I would like you to fund me for $3 million today. That's why I'm here. They get through the whole presentation, then they're exhausted, and they actually never really say what they're there for. And that's always a bad sign. We don't usually fund those. The other thing is present the idea as an investment. Now, you can have a lifestyle business, that's great, but we as VCs are looking for businesses, not lifestyle businesses. So that's really important. So those are three things just to keep in mind. Yeah?
What's the distinction between a business and a lifestyle business?
Yeah. Lifestyle business is sort of the idea that, and this is fine because many entrepreneurs have lifestyle businesses, that they're fine businesses, that we're going to have a very modest growth rate. We're going to pull a lot of dividends out. I'll pay myself out of my business. I'm not going to scale it. So for a venture capitalist, that's not what we're looking for. Now, it may be a great idea, and it may be a great entrepreneurial idea. There's nothing wrong with it, but make sure you understand what the difference is. Because investors are going to look for something that they can actually grow with you on, as opposed to, you know, it being your lifestyle. Does that make sense? So that's kind of at a summary level, kind of what you should look for. And I guess in parting, I wanted to just leave the entrepreneur's motto, which is, sleep is for the weak. If at first you don't succeed, go for a second round. That was the question you're asking. And then third, I came, I saw, and I IPO'd. So that's where you want to go. That's where you want to be. Any last questions that anybody has related to what we talked about? Yeah. So let's just open that up.
Short-term versus long-term investment for VCs. Do they even care about the long-term investment? 15 years?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, you know, the average life of a VC fund is 10 years. The actual statutory life of a VC fund is 10 years. The average life is more like 14 to 15. So the whole exit horizon has gotten a lot longer than it used to be, largely because there's been recessions and stuff. But we're usually looking at an early stage investment. We would like to get, you know, an outcome, probably in a 7-year kind of horizon. If it's a later stage, meaning it's like 15, 20 million in revenues or higher, we're looking at a 3 to 5 year kind of cycle. And our return multiple goes with that. So in that later stage, we're looking for, you know, 4 to 5 times return. And in that 7-year period, we're looking for like 10 years. So how many of you have taken, you know, present value theory? Probably a few. But, you know, the time value of money, the longer it goes out, you need a higher return multiple. But that's kind of the typical one. Now, angels are usually on a shorter horizon. Because, you know, angels will, they'll be quite happy with, you know, maybe getting a return out of investment in 5 to 10 years. You know, they're more patient. The challenge with angels is if you have to go get more money, you have to figure out if they can actually write the next check. And so some angels can do that, some can't. So if you're structuring your business, one of the things to think through is, are the investors that you have investors that can continue on for another round of capital? Because it's almost likely you're going to have another one. So I hope that helps. Any other questions? Yeah.
It's kind of not related, but I was wondering if you can talk about, you know, in terms of the number of investments that you have done over the years.
Yeah, sure.
And just give us some idea about the
color. Yeah.
The color on
yeah.
the success rate. And,
sure. So, you know, being a VC is a lot like, you know, being a baseball player. So I don't know how many of you, you know, follow baseball, but, you know, if you have a 400, 500 batting average on 10 deals, meaning that 4 to 5 of them are successful, what you want to have is maybe 1 home run, a triple, and 2 singles. And that will make your fund. Because a typical VC fund is usually going to make its returns. We target a 3 times return generally on our funds. And usually that will, a big exit will make the fund. And so there's lots of examples. We had a company in our first fund that was called Quantive. I don't know how many of you know Quantive. Those at Microsoft probably know Quantive because he just wrote it off, I think. But, you know, that company sold to Microsoft for $6 billion. And obviously that was a nice win we had in our first fund. We've also had some losses. You know, so the other thing that VCs never talk about is, you know, how you lost money. But you learn, to your other question about failure, you know, we fail half the time. So half of our investments are probably not going to make it. And that's the hardest thing when you first start investing as a VC, is to come to this realization that you're going to have to cut somebody off and you're going to lose money. And the sooner you do that, the better. But that's always a hard thing because human nature is you want to keep going. You want people to be successful. And so we've had companies. I had one company in my portfolio that didn't make it. And the name of the company was eCustomers. And it was a personalization company that started in 2000. So unfortunately, we missed the fact that it was a great market idea, but we missed the fact that it had a dependency, which was that you had to have a content engine on your website deployed at that time in order to apply personalization. And then we hit the 2011 downturn. And the ironic thing is we never had a customer. So here's a company called eCustomers, but we never had a customer. And so that one took something like 20 million in capital, and we got one customer that was like $10,000. And so that one we shut down. What's the learning we got out of that? Well, you better hold them to milestones a lot earlier. Now, that was not all of our money, fortunately, in 2020, but we lost probably 4 on it. But, you know, there's going to be those kinds of examples. I would say in general, in our portfolio, and this is useful for you guys as you think through your business ideas, they usually fail for 2 reasons. One has to do with market timing. So you have a great idea, but it's too early in the market. And that was an example. This company was too early in the market. The other is the management team doesn't gel, or the team doesn't execute. And those are probably the 2 biggest. There's other reasons, but those are the 2 biggest deals. I would also tell you, as you're hiring people, the most important thing to do is to invest time in picking people. Because if you don't invest that time and you hire the wrong people in these startups, that is a 2-year, 1 year, at least a 1 to 2 year mistake for that particular position. And that is so important. We just have a company now that they hired somebody, they didn't do the background checks. We found out as he got in there, he actually started using credit cards without authorization. He put out purchase orders without a PO. He basically made commitments without a PO. And then then the company did the background check after they hired him. And they found that he didn't graduate from 2 colleges that he represented. He had a prior track record of fraud. And so this is an example where you've got to spend the time to really get high quality, grounded people that have the passion that you guys have. So that's probably the biggest lesson that we've learned in investing is a lot of it's around the people and how the people work together, and how they actually execute together. So, any other questions in general? Yeah.
Question. This is maybe just my lack of knowledge around VC,
Sure.
I guess. But people that are cutting you checks to invest their money.
Yeah, how does that work?
Do they totally take themselves out of the loop in the process? Like, do they have say in who you're investing in at that point, or are they basically saying?
Yeah, that's a good question. The way we work is, because we actually have to go raise money too, so we have to make pitches just like you guys do. And we have to do it about every 4 to 5 years. And so we go out and get largely institutional investors, family offices, endowments like universities, pension plans, and they invest in us. They will commit dollars, and then we take their money down over the life of the fund. So if you committed $1 million, we take it down over 5 to 7 years. And we do it as we invest. And so once you make the commitment, the money's in the fund. And then the only governance that they have is through an advisory committee, an LP advisory committee. But they don't review our decisions. They'll review annually what our strategy is, and tell us we're on base or off base, that kind of thing. So that's how it is. Yeah.
This is a general question about the industry, but given the return the last 10 years,
Yeah.
we all know.
Oh, I never heard this question. Invest in bonds is no.
But how do you contrast that with the good years, right?
Yeah.
And how do you see that affecting the overall?
Sure. So there's a couple of questions embedded in there. I'll take one was what does the return profile look like for the industry? The last 10 years has been a really tough period for venture capital. So 2000 to 2010 in particular, there were 2 major recessions in there, and the returns in venture were below other asset classes. And so that put venture out of favor in some institutional investors' eyes. Now, it's a very cyclical asset class, though, similar to private equity and other asset classes. And it actually, if you look at the data, the best time to invest in venture is on the front, particularly technology in venture, is on the front end of a paradigm shift. So we're in the middle of a paradigm shift, meaning we're going to connected computing. And if you look at the other time we had really good returns in venture capital, they were at the beginning of the internet era. And interestingly enough, if you map these paradigm shifts, those of you who are technologists in here, they're almost 10 years, even though everybody thinks they're getting compressed. But for venture investing, it's almost a 10-year cycle. So if you go back from what you want to call connected computing, ubiquitous computing, computing everywhere, which is where we are now, back to internet, back to microcomputers, mini computers, et cetera. Those are about 10-year cycles, and usually the venture returns are better on the front end of those cycles. So funds that were started in 2006 to 2010, 11 are going to have pretty good returns. So they look pretty promising right now. So it's a cycle. And the really good institutional investors will invest over that cycle in the up and down years because they know it's going to be up and down. The ones that are more momentum oriented are the ones that are probably not going to do as well because they invest based on how well that prior couple of years did. So it's interesting to watch financial institutions who came in late in the venture market in 2000, 2001, or 99, 2000. And when they came in then, they didn't have very good returns, but some of the endowments were investing all the way along. Does that help on that?
Yeah, a follow-up question. What do you think of accelerators?
Oh, I think accelerators. I think they play a really important role. And there's been two booms and busts in accelerators. There's two booms, one bust. So there were accelerators that were started in 99, 2000, a whole bunch of them here in town, there were like 3 of them. And the model didn't work. The problem that they had is they were bringing companies in, and Techstars is different. So it's something we've learned on this, I think. They'd bring companies in, and then they didn't know how to get them out. And so in the early accelerator model, incubator model, they'd bring the companies in, and they'd try to add all this value. And so a lot of times the companies were companies that couldn't get funded because their teams weren't that good, and they had to supplement that talent. Now the Techstars model, how many of you know about Techstars? Yeah, good. So the Techstars model is very different because you come in, you have a distinct period of time, you're mentored, and then you exit out. And so I think that model is pretty effective. And I think it's created some really great innovative companies, and it also is a very selective model. And then I think like 600 of them get culled down to 10 or 15. So a lot of it depends on how the model is. The biggest challenge on that whole concept is how do you get the companies out into the environment. So we should, I don't know how our time is. Are we okay?
If there are more questions, ask your questions.
If there's any other questions, I'm happy to take them. Because it's also a little warm in here, so we probably want to give everybody a break and go on. Thank you guys for being here tonight.
Thank you.
Oh my gosh, like one of my
15 minutes,
lines.
is it? Oh yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's beat the carrots.
Let's take 15 minutes at 25 past. We'll come back.
No, even like.
I need to turn this up.
I'll edit that back.